Hi everyone, and welcome to the Bear Necessities. I'm Bear, and today we are making grasshopper cake. We are doing a grasshopper chocolate roulade, which is going to be a minty sponge cake with a marshmallow cream, just a good sweet marshmallow cream rolled up, so the roulade, so it's a Swiss roll, and then it's going to have a dark chocolate ganache over the top. So we've got the mint, the chocolate, and then that marshmallowy goodness. I'm so excited. It's going to be like candy. And to start out, we're going to be making Creme De Menthe, which is what makes grasshopper pie and cake and everything else what it is. Because it's the coloring, which I know, we're going to have to use food coloring. We've discussed this before. I'm not a fan, but we need it for the authenticity of it, and it's fun. But it's for the coloring, the flavor, because it's Creme De Menthe means mint cream. It's not creamy. It's just a good minty sweet syrup. You can use it in so many other things, mint juleps and daiquiris, things like that. Over ice cream, it's amazing. Usually it is an alcoholic liqueur. It does have alcohol in it. A lot of people make it at home with vodka. This is not going to have alcohol. As y'all know, we don't drink in this house just for various reasons. So instead, we're going to be making our own. It's not going to be like the closest thing to actual Creme De Menthe, the liqueur, but it's going to be really close for what we need. And the way that you get started, up on the graphic here, is you need a cup of mint leaves, which is a lot, chopped up. It doesn't have to be a fairly fine chop. Just make sure that they're kind of roughed up really well, kind of ripped apart. One of the recipes I found was like, just rip them into 4. And I was like, okay, well, you take your time doing that. I'm going to grab a knife and just chop because Then you also need a cup of water. We're not making a huge amount of syrup here. It easily doubles, and you wouldn't even have to double the amount of mint that you're using at that point. If you do 2. Just because it is going to be fairly potent, I know. Then you need either a cup of sugar. This is a simple syrup, so it's a 1-to-1 water to sugar ratio. Or I'm using a monk fruit and allulose mix. So I only need a little over half a cup to be the equivalent of the sweetness of a full cup of sugar. Then I have mint extract. This is optional. If you're just going to do mint leaves, it's great. You're still going to get that lovely herby sweet mint flavor that you're looking for. But this, because I want it to be a concentrated flavor, because I'm only going to be using a little bit at a time, I'm going to give it a bit of a boost by adding just a teaspoon of that. And then food coloring. This is neon green food coloring, so or at least I was assured that it was by the box. Colorblind. And so we're just going to be using about 4 drops of this. I may actually add more when we get ready to make the cake, just to really make it green. So like we want it almost obnoxiously green. Yeah. So, but it's going to taste amazing. So yay. Let's get started. In a pot, it doesn't have to be terribly large. We're going to be heating our water and our sugar or sweetener, whatever you're using, up to boiling. So let me get those 2 together. There we go. And I'm just going to bring this up to the boil. All right, so what we want is to bring our water and sugar up to a boil. You really want the sugar to be dissolved in this. And once it is at that boil, we're going to turn the heat off, add our mint leaves in, and just let it steep. So kind of like making a very extremely sweet tea. Unless you're in Texas, then it's just sweet tea. So let's let that come up to the boil. Thankfully, this cooktop will make that a very fast process for us. Now, a lot of simple syrups, when you make them and you're cooking them together, it'll say cook them to the string stage, which is about 125 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. We're not doing that. Because this is sugar-free, it's never going to thicken the same way for me. Otherwise, I would suggest doing that for yours. It just makes it more of that nice luxurious syrup. That way, in case you do, toss some on some lovely chocolate ice cream or something, it's the right viscosity. Otherwise, it's going to be super watery. For my needs, watery is fine. We don't really add it to a whole bunch of other things. I'm actually kind of making this for this purpose, and then I'm going to have to get real creative with the rest of it. So, yeah. My water is now at the boil, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn the heat off. That's it. That's all we needed, was to bring it up to the boil. I'm going to add all of my mint leaves. If you are using sugar, as I said, and you're cooking it down, and you want it to be the thick syrup, go ahead and let it boil for about 6 minutes if you don't have a candy thermometer. And that'll get it to the right consistency for you, just reducing enough of the water from it. That already smells like minty heaven. But we're going to let this go ahead and steep for 30 minutes. And I'm just going to push it to the side. And then while that's steeping, let's go ahead and get some of the other stuff going. So I'll be right back, and we will get going on the ganache. Thank you, oven. Oven, just let me know it's preheated. So we're going to get started on the ganache. We are going to make our marshmallow cream because all of those have to sit for a little while too. And then we're going to get going on our lovely grasshopper green sponge, because by then the syrup will be ready and we can use it, since it won't be boiling, we can use it hot for this. So I'm just going to push this aside, and I'll see y'all back in just a second. Okie dokie, so now we're going to make our ganache. Ganache is just a chocolate and cream mix in equal parts. We want the equal parts because we want it to set up softly, but just firm enough that it'll spread without just pouring over everywhere. We are going to let it sit at room temperature as well. I have in here 300 grams of chocolate chips. Not a lot of recipes will be like, don't use chocolate chips. Just use whatever chocolate you got. These aren't just regular chocolate chips though. These are from Lily's. These are made with stevia, and they are a dark chocolate chip. So they are a little bit lighter in carbohydrates, and by a little, I mean a lot, and a little bit lower in calories. I know that doesn't matter to everybody, but in case of any kind of people that have sugar restrictions, diabetics, people with any kind of colitis, things like that, try the Lily's. Their chocolates are really, really, really good. I am not being sponsored, but I wouldn't say no, at least to a lifetime supply. It's really easy on my tummy, and I'm fairly sensitive to super sweet things. So just saying. If you're a bariatric person and you want chocolate chip cookies, that's where you go. So that's those. In our pot to go with it, I have heavy whipping cream. I have an equal part, so 300 grams of heavy whipping cream here. I did it by weight. If you're going to do it volumetrically, measure your chocolate chips volumetrically. I know there's going to be gaps, so add just a few extra on top. Not going to hurt anything. And the others can get eaten. That's fine. And then measure your cream to the exact same amount, however much you're wanting to make. And remember that it's going to make about 1.5 times the cream amount. A little bit more than that. I also added about a tablespoon of butter to this. Butter just adds a little bit more fat, some more flavor, and it helps the ganache be really shiny and lovely and smooth and super easy to spread when you're trying to decorate with it after it's set up. So adding just a little bit of butter makes it so much more. You can use coconut oil, things like that if you want. I wouldn't suggest margarine just because of the nature of margarine, but things like the other fats that melt a little bit better. And I know some people that even use vegetable shortening. So you've got options, or you can just leave it out. It's fine. It'll still come out shiny. I just prefer it. So what we do is we're going to get our cream up to an almost boiling, so just like a little bit of simmer. We don't want to scald it, but we do want to melt the butter in it and get it hot enough that we're going to be able to pour it onto these lovely chocolate chips and let them sit for about a minute, stir it, and it's ganache. So let's get that going. And thankfully my cooktop only takes a second for it to get going. All right, my cream has come up. The butter definitely melted. On the induction cooktop, it only took 45 seconds. It just started to bubble on the edges ever so slightly. That's where you stop. As Mary Berry teaches us, remember that chocolate melts in a child's pocket, which means at about 95 degrees, at about 36-ish degrees, chocolate will melt, so you don't need too much. But we want to make sure that it goes liquid enough first to kind of realign the crystals and let it get smooth and delicious. So let me just scrape out all this creamy goodness because I don't want to miss a single bit of it. And let that sit for just a second. Push this out so you can't really hear it anymore. And we just start stirring. It's going to look a bit funny when you start. Don't worry about that. It will come together and be this just luxurious, luscious chocolate cream sauce that is just absolutely divine. You want to make an amazing, quick dessert for someone that you like. Make some ganache. Just not even a whole lot. Maybe a cup of chocolate, cup of cream. If you do alcohol, maybe add some raspberry liqueur, something like that, or even orange liqueur. And just get that together. You don't need much of the liqueur, just not even a shot. So less than an ounce, maybe a tablespoon. Just don't push your luck. And get some pre-made little puff pastry pie shells, or just small pie shell, or if you want to make it yourself, just a little itty bitty one. Pour the ganache into that. Add a little bit of powdered sugar onto the top once it's set up after about an hour or so. Add a little powdered sugar and some fresh berries. It's heaven. And it's just a chocolate ganache tart. It's super simple, doesn't take a whole lot of work, and it's pretty amazing tasting, especially if you do go ahead and splurge and get really good chocolate. Then yeah, you're gonna win with that. All right, so we have our ganache all mixed together. Like I said, it is luxurious and it holds a little bit of a ribbon. So that's perfect. I'm going to go ahead and sit this off to the side because it's going to need to sit for an hour or two before it's really ready, which is great because the cake also has to sit for a little while before it's ready. So everything comes together at the end. So let's get this out of the way and I will be right back and we can make the marshmallow cream. All right, y'all, I'm back and it's time to make marshmallow cream. I'm so excited about this part. Oh my gosh, it's so good. As we've discussed before, I don't like marshmallow unless I make it. I really don't like marshmallow cream unless I make it because then I can kind of control what it tastes like. And I don't like it as runny as it gets in the stores. Then I learned something. So when you buy that jar of marshmallow fluff or cream or whatever it's called where you're from, you're supposed to whip that. Again, when you get it home, like when you're ready to use it and serve it, you whip that back up and then it's stiff and lovely marshmallow cream, not pouring everywhere. Cool. But we are going to make this cream here. I'm going to be making it with maple. This is a lovely maple, not from my friends, not from Her Nation's Farms, unfortunately. But this maple I got at Costco. And it's aged in whiskey barrels and it tastes amazing. It has that lovely smoky flavor to it that I really appreciate in some of the other maple that I've had. For this, you're also going to need the equivalent of 3 large egg whites or 4 like just regular egg whites, depending on how big your eggs are. You will need 3/4 of a cup of sugar or whatever sugar substitute you're using. Try to avoid stevia for baking or anything that says for baking, because they've added emulsifiers and things to make it a little bit lighter and easier to measure out equal parts 1-to-1. You don't want that. If you're using stevia, you need to look at the measurements on the equivalent of the packets to see what that's the equivalent of in regular sugar and make that difference. Yeah. Otherwise, stick with what you know. I'm using allulose and monk fruit because, again, it's what I have right now that's granulated, and I do need that. You also need cream of tartar. You don't absolutely have to have it, but it does make life so much easier because your eggs will whip up and then stay set up the way that you have them. They won't weep, they won't lose any water, things like that. Cream of tartar just helps stabilize them. You'll need a little bit of salt, just a pinch kind of for the flavor. And then we're going to be doing vanilla in this. You could do creme de menthe. You can do really whatever flavor you want. I once used grape, and let me tell you, grape marshmallows, amazing. So grape. But we're just going to be using a little bit of vanilla in these because it's going on the inside and there's so much other flavor going on with this cake. We really don't want it overwhelmed. So let's get started. In here, I am starting with 1/3 of a cup of water. I forgot to tell you that part. So I have 1/3 of a cup of water in here that I'm going to be bringing up to a boil. This involves a lot of stove cooking, y'all. And while that's coming up to boil, I'm going to go ahead and add my sugar or sugar substitute again. And I'm going to add my syrup. Now, I'm using maple. You can use agave, honey, corn syrup. Corn syrup is the most traditional for marshmallow making. I don't readily appreciate corn products as it is. And corn syrup is always just so incredibly overly sweet for me, which is the point of corn syrup, is that fructose blast. Maple works very well in this. I think I've become a maple convert, so yay. But you only need 3/4 of a cup of it. So equal parts your sugar and then your syrup, whatever syrup you're using. Honey, if you've watched any of my videos, we've also done a honey marshmallow cream. Amazing. Tastes absolutely amazing. It is just so very, very tasty. I'm going to let this start sitting, and once I see bubbles coming up onto the side, I'm going to give it a quick stir just to make sure everything's kind of moved, and let it start to dissolve the solid sugars that are in there. Once those are dissolved, we will then let it cook for 7 to 8 minutes until it reaches 240 degrees Fahrenheit. Can't remember what that is in Celsius. I'm so sorry. It's maybe 116, 118, somewhere around there. Educated guess. Please somebody correct me in the comments. I know you will anyway. So let's just get this stirring. You want it to 240 degrees Fahrenheit because that is what's called softball stage. So if you were to pour it out and then allow it to cool completely, you'd be able to squeeze it into soft balls of sugar. So like it would be very toffee candy-ish, sticky, messy candy. Sometimes you need that. We need that for the marshmallows just because we're reducing that much of the water content from this. I know, we added water, we need it to melt the sugar. Then we have to reduce that back out as much as possible. All right, my sweetener has completely dissolved in there. It's absolutely translucent down to the bottom, and it's starting to bubble. So I'm going to reduce the temperature ever so slightly, and I'm going to switch. I'm lucky. This does sous vide. So the cooktop will read my pot and keep it at the proper temperature so that it will cook correctly. I have learned there's about a 20-degree variance on it, so I have to keep it about 20 degrees higher to get it to candy cooking stage. So I'm going to keep it at 260 while it cooks down for 7 to 8 minutes. And then I will take it off. I will check the viscosity, and I'll show you. If you've ever had to use cooking oil, that's about the viscosity we're looking for. That's the thickness that we're looking for. That's what that word is. And so we're looking for that thickness while it's slightly cooled. So when you stir it and you lift your spoon up and you just let it kind of pour, it'll be thinner, but you'll notice that it starts to kind of stick and drip. And once it looks like it's kind of like oil on there, stop. That's where we need to be. That's if you don't have a thermometer, which Bear broke his thermometer. So, oops. So I am going to have to go off of time, and I'm just going to let this just bubble away. I am going to set a timer for myself now that I've gotten it to a full bubble. And just let that do its thing. And in the meantime, while that is doing its thing, so rude, spoon. Actually, that's fine. My lovely assistant, this random pair of ghost hands, is going to hand me my mixer. That's my husband's arms, by the way. Aren't they fantastic? Cute arms. And we're going to get Loretta, our lovely, lovely Loretta, set up because we need to start whipping our eggs. We're going to leave the vanilla toward the end because we don't want it to kind of cook off. And we're done with our sweet syrup. You just need cream of tartar, your salt, and your egg whites. The salt will come when we start adding the syrup, by the way. So it's all going to work. Let's get going. Now, I've gone ahead and cleaned this extremely well. You want zero possibility of fat on anything for this. Fat will absolutely stop this from rising the way that we need it to. Sorry. The easiest way to clean your bowl is if you have a lemon or you have apple cider vinegar, something like that, just wipe it out with that. It won't taste like those when you're doing it, so don't worry about that. You just need it to be clean of any fat, and the acid from the lemon or the apple cider vinegar or whatever you use, as long as it's acidic, will make sure any fats are broken down and wiped out. So that's what we did there. I'm going to go ahead and add my egg whites. Put that to the side. And like I said, this is half a teaspoon of cream of tartar. So just going to get that measured and then dumped right into the egg. Simple as that. Now, for a lot of meringues and things like that, you usually whip sugar into that. Since we're whipping the syrup in, same principle, we're just going to do it much later in the process. And we're going to whip this until it is soft peaks. And then we're going to let it just sit there, because it only takes 2 or 3 minutes for it to get to that stage, usually. And then we have to wait for our syrup, and then we make the next steps. So I'm going to speed through, and I'll see y'all back in just 3 seconds. So remember I taught you about stiff peak versus soft peak. So soft peak is when you can draw your whisk or whatever out, pull it up, and the peak falls over. That is your soft peak. Stiff peak is when you pull it out and it just points straight back up to heaven. So we are at the right place with the eggs. We're just going to let them sit here and be cool. While I wait for the syrup to finish, I am going to pull it back to me and just let it continue cooking. So see y'all back in just a few seconds again. Okay, since it was babysitting itself while we were doing that, I decided when I pulled it back to raise the temperature and let it cook a little faster. So in about 6 minutes, I got it to boil up enough to reduce it, and as it pours off my spoon, it leaves a trail, and then it's got slow drips. And it's very thick. And unless you have asbestos hands, don't do what I just did. You will burn yourself. Unfortunately, I've burned my fingers so much, it no longer hurts. So, it is what it is. But it is a luxurious, beautiful syrup. I don't know if you can really see the color there. It is so gorgeous. Just a lovely deep amber color. And I'm going to put her back on medium speed out of 10, so about 4 to 5. A little bit slower is fine while we add our syrup in. We don't want it to be running too fast, the mixer, because it might sling syrup, and this syrup is 240 degrees. That is way above boiling and enough to cause extremely serious burns. So be careful. A little bit is going to slosh up onto the side of your bowl, whatever you're using to mix. That's cool. You'll be able to scrape it back down and it'll go in. So don't worry about that. When you're pouring it, have your pan just ever so slightly over the edge of your bowl. You want it to pour down the side of your bowl, not splashing in. That way it's also getting a chance to cool slightly before it pours into the egg itself, and then the whisk will take care of the rest. So let's get that going. And what I'm doing is pouring extremely slowly, just above a drip, but not much above. That way not too much goes in and it doesn't risk cooking the egg in an unpleasant way. We are cooking the egg white, which is what makes this safe for us. And this marshmallow cream can be saved at room temperature in an airtight container for up to 2 weeks. So if it lasts that long in your home, there you go. All right, and now that we have all of the syrup in and mixed in, I'm going to put this up on high and let it run for 4 to 5 minutes just to get to stiff peaks. And at that point, I'm going to add our vanilla. Right now, I'm adding just our pinch of salt. Remember, it's just a tiny bit, just to kind of oomph the flavor. And then we're going to continue from there. So I'll see y'all back in just a few seconds. All right, so see, it's not falling. It actually just kind of bobs there. If I were to lift that peak up, it just stays. Oh, that is good. That is stiff peaks. That's what we're looking for. So now let's add our vanilla. It's about a teaspoon. You can add up to maybe 2 for this, but not much more. And let's get that mixed in. And we're going to let this run for 8 to 10 minutes on high until it's cool to the touch. So let's get it back going. Okay, we have marshmallow cream. It is so delicious. It is so shiny and beautiful. Now, we're going to be using Loretta for the cake, so I am going to need to clean this bowl. So let's transfer all of the marshmallow cream over. You can see what I am working with here. Or at least I'm sure you'd like to. Let me get it scooped out first. But it is shiny. It is smooth, it is creamy. It's this gorgeous ivory color it looks like. It's not white, I can tell you that. That's so good. Extremely sweet, of course, but really good. Very creamy. So I'm going to cover this with a little bit of plastic. And we're going to let this sit at room temperature for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. All right, so it is time for us to finish off our mint syrup. I've got a strainer over a bowl, and I'm just going to pour the mint syrup through. I may get some teeny tiny little mint leaf pieces. I'm actually not offended by them. Some people are. I enjoy the slight bitterness that comes from it, but that's me. We're just going to press as much of the syrup out of it as possible. And the mint gave off so much of its oil and flavor. I genuinely don't know if I'll be able to tip this enough. It is golden, like it's honey golden in here. If you were just making this with mint extract, you would put it in now, all of it, and you would just have your syrup. I am going to go ahead and add my 3 drops of food coloring to this so that I have my mint green syrup. So again, you can't really see into this bowl. I am so sorry, but it smells amazing. Oh, that is pure mint heaven. Wow, that's fantastic. A little bit cooling, but not overly. So perfect. All right, I'm going to let this sit over to the side, and I'm gonna get everything ready for the cake. I'm gonna get everything put to the side, and I'm gonna get ready for us to make the cake, because it's finally time to start putting it all together, kind of. The cake has to bake, and then it has to sit for an hour. And then it will be time to actually construct this amazing dessert. So I'll see y'all back in just a second. Okay, we are back for the cake part. So excited. So I have Loretta here set up with her balloon whisk again. She's not getting a break today because she needs to whip some more eggs. What I have for our cake is 5 eggs. Yeah. You need 3 of them separated, so yolks from the egg white. And we're going to be whipping the egg whites, but we will be using the yolks as well. We want all of these eggs in there. The other 2 we're going to be using whole with the yolks, so don't worry about that. You also need 1 cup of all-purpose flour or whatever baking substitute that you use. Just make sure it has a little bit of xanthan gum or something to really kind of hold it together, because this does depend on anything it can possibly get to kind of keep itself together. Otherwise the cake might be too light and just crack apart. You need a full cup of sugar or whatever sweetener you're using. This is my stevia and allulose mix. Because I'm baking with it, I'm not really worried about it getting all frothy and liquid, because it's not going to be doing that anyway. You also need a teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon of salt. And then you need, if you're just doing a vanilla cake, which is fantastic, they're absolutely delicious, you need 1/3 cup of water and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Because I'm wanting to let people know this is aggressively mint, I will be using a full 1/3 cup of my syrup. And I put it into a clear glass bowl so that you could see it. It's I don't know if you can actually tell the color, but it's very dark, very luxurious. That's only from 3 drops of food coloring. We are going to be adding about 2 more drops to the cake itself, just to really drive it home that this is green and it is mint. Because, again, let's be obnoxious with it if we're going to do it. I believe that's all the ingredients. Hang on. Oh yeah, you also need a baking sheet. A half sheet is about right for this. And you're going to want to oil it incredibly liberally. I don't care if it's nonstick or not. Oil it liberally. Put your parchment on there if you're going to use parchment. And then oil the top of that too. Because we don't want anything to stick to this cake. And we don't want it to stick to anything else. So there we go. And you need a kitchen towel of some sort. Tea towels are okay. Kitchen towels, like the thicker ones, are a little bit better because they have a better stretch to them. And you're going to want to take some powdered sugar, I know, or if you're doing a chocolate one, cocoa, and sprinkle that all over one side of your towel, because we're going to be putting our cake onto that and rolling it up in it, and we don't want the towel to stick to the cake either. So prepare for that. You'll also need another piece of parchment for that process. This is the big job. So let's get started. I'm going to get my egg whites into Loretta's bowl. I'm not using cream of tartar at this point just because I don't really need the stabilizers because we're going to be mixing this in with flour and things like that. Not a big deal. Let me move my Creme De Menthe out of the way. All right, into the big bowl, I have already dropped my 3 egg yolks, and I'm going to crack my 2 eggs in as well. And of course, crack on the side so that you can watch for shell. 1 and 2. And the first one of these 2 was one of Mabel's eggs. So thank you, Mabel. The other one, we don't know, but she lays freckled eggs and they're really cute. So yay. We've got those. Give that a tiny little swirl. Put the eggs shells to the side. And into this, we're going to go ahead and add our sugar, sweetener, whatever we're using, and our liquid. So again, if you're doing vanilla cake, so you're going to be adding your 3rd cup of water, and just cool water is perfect. And then your 2 teaspoons of vanilla, or the equivalent of whatever flavoring you're using. Since I am using Creme De Menthe, I'm using the full amount. So mine's going to be extra sweet too, and that's okay. We're just going to get that off to the side for other purposes at some point. And let's just get all of this whipped together really quick, just to get the egg yolks broken up and the albumin from the other 2 eggs really mixed in. If you're using traditional crystallized sugar, then this will cream up pretty quickly. But you're going to need to whip this for just a minute until it's a little bit fluffy and light. So that's dissolved most of my sweetener, and my eggs have gotten a little bit frothy and light. It's hard to tell with these how much lighter they've gotten because they are so extraordinarily yellow. My goodness, these are very yellow eggs. And we are going to get our flour in there, and we're just going to get it mixed until it's just incorporated. We don't need it to be mixed too much. And I'm going to go ahead and add just 2 drops of my food coloring to go ahead and increase the green in this cake. So let's put that to the side and let it sit. I have not yet added my salt and baking powder. I'm not going to add that until we're ready to start adding the eggs, just because I don't want it to activate too much early. So let's get the eggs started. I'm going to whip these on high for about 5 to 6 minutes until they hold stiff peaks. So I'll see y'all back in just a second. Stiff peaks, perfect. So now, get this out of the way. Let's go ahead and add our baking soda, or baking powder, excuse me, and salt. And I'm going to switch from my dough whisk over to a spatula, just so I can fold in the eggs. I'm putting about 1/3 of the egg white in. See, 3 eggs didn't make a huge amount, but made enough to lighten this up. And what I'm doing is I'm turning my spoon so down the side, if you can see, and you just pull the spoon up. You don't have to have it perfect. There will be a little bit of egg white left into this. That's fine the first time around. Even the second time a little bit. 3rd time it does need to be mixed. What we're doing this first one is just lightening the batter so that the rest of the egg can have a chance. And we don't want to whip this too much. We don't want to mix this too much because that can deflate it. And the eggs are really what give us that light, airy texture. Yes, we have a little bit of leavening in there as insurance, but we need the eggs for the volume and the body. So now I'm just turning from the side, scraping down the side, and coming up the center of the bowl, turning the egg white in, and just letting it mix all together. The last bit of our fluffy egg whites. And these eggs were at room temperature, but that doesn't make an enormous amount of difference. It just helps them whip up faster. They will still get fluffy if they are cold. It just takes a little bit longer for them to warm up properly. That is all. I'm mixing the egg whites in. Again, scraping down the sides, not mixing too hard. I know it looks like I'm moving a lot, but I'm actually just twisting my arm an enormous amount to make sure I get all the little bits. And there we go. We have our very colorful batter. Sit that to the side for a second. Let me grab our baking sheet and some oil. So I have here my big old half sheet baking sheet and some parchment. Going to go ahead, excuse me for the noise, spray my sheet and just rub the oil all over the inside, because even though, again, this is non-stick, I want to make sure that the cake comes out as easily as possible. It will stick a tiny bit, that's inevitable. But if we can reduce the amount that it sticks, all the better. Okay, and so I rubbed it, and then I got it up the sides as well. Fold that little corner. All right, and now my parchment. And as you can see, it just sticks right into the oil. Get any bubbles out from under it. It doesn't have to be perfect though, don't worry. I just like it a little bit even, that's all. And oil your parchment. Thought I could fold it, still in the way. So, there we go. And so oil your parchment, because this is what will help it come out of the pan easier. The oil and the parchment, and then we'll be able to just pull the parchment right off of it and switch over to the clean sheet. And now into this, we are going to add our batter, which is extremely light for the volume that we have. And at this point, I'm going to remind you that your oven should be at 375 degrees. If it is not, go ahead and get that going. That'd be a real cool idea. I'm sure the graphic earlier reminded you several times because I forgot to. So thank you, future me, for editing that into the video. All right, I've got the batter in here. I'm just going to get it spread out fairly evenly. It can take its own level, but it will not spread out completely by itself. So it just needs gentle nudges down into the corners. And you can also pick it up and kind of tilt it in, depending on how delicate it came out for you. Mine's holding up pretty well. Happy with that. I don't have any gigantic air bubbles from my eggs or my leavening just yet. Now I am just going to make sure it kind of gets into the sides, and I'm going to tap this pan a little bit just to get any big air bubbles out. So one, sorry for the noise, and two, yes, I know I said don't break it down, but you do need to kill any of the really big bubbles. That's all I needed to do, really, is just a few taps, and that got them all. It's nice and smooth. That'll help it stay together, because then you don't have any big air pockets. Now we're going to bake this at 375 for 9 to 12 minutes. Knowing my oven, it's probably going to be right about 10. At 7 minutes, start watching it like a hawk on a chicken. Just watch your cake. You want it to be golden on the outside and just done on the inside. When you open to check at 9 to 10 minutes, depending on your oven, press down into the center. If it springs back perfectly, like it just comes back up to you, stop cooking. Pull it out, it's done. If it still isn't quite springing back, let it go for another minute at a time. No more than that. And just press, press, press. It will get there. It may take it a little bit longer because you're letting heat out each time, but it'll get there. It's a very delicate cake. We do not want to overcook it because then it will not roll. It will crack. And then you will be able to make a layered cake out of it, which is still good, but not what we're going for. So let's get this baking, and I'll see y'all back in just a few seconds. So, cake just came out of the oven. It is still screaming hot. Let me just run a knife around the edge. I'm using my offset spatula. And in powdering the towel, which you see below me, got it kind of everywhere, which it's going to anyway. This is not a part that you're going to be able to do and stay clean. Just prepare for that. That was not part of the agreement when you decided to make this cake. So we flip this over, and that's why it's messy. Let's see. Oh, look, the parchment pulled itself off. And there's our sponge. So pretty. Now I'm going to put the fresh piece of parchment over the top, or the bottom. Because the cake is still warm and steamy, parchment's wanting to roll up on us. It happens. Okay, so now we're just going to very carefully roll up our sponge cake, trying to keep it both tight and loose enough that it won't crack too much, if at all. And there we go. We have our little cake burrito. And I'm just going to set it over to the side for now, so that it can rest. It's going to need to be in there for an hour. That's it. We want it cool, but not just ice cold. And once it has sat for that hour, I will come back to you and we will continue with the final parts of putting this grasshoppery lovely cake together. I'll see y'all soon. All right, so it has been a little over an hour, not much, about an hour 15. Everything is nice and cool and ready. The cake actually is still a tiny bit warm, which is perfect. That'll help us keep it going. First, I wanted to take some Andes candies, because that's kind of what inspired this whole cake. And I'm going to just chop up a couple to put on top, you know, for fun, for some lovely decoration. So, chef's knife, and a little bit of minty chocolate. Of course, Andes are a Creme De Menthe candy, so you have a good idea of what you're shooting for here. And you can buy pre-chopped candies. I actually believe they're the ones that break during making, so perfect for them to not have to waste them. But I saw these at the store and I was like, oh, that's fine. I'll just do that. All right, so what we're going to do is take our Creme De Menthe. I had to actually warm this back up just a little bit in the microwave for 15 seconds. One of the things I've learned about allulose and monk fruit that I've used is it will crystallize after a while, so you can just remelt it. So just a heads up, if you're using it and it starts to crystallize, it's fine. You can remelt it. It'll be perfectly all right. It threw me off the first time, so I figured might as well let you know. So let's get our cake unrolled. Be a little bit careful. It risks breaking at this point because while still fairly pliable, it is still cake. And look at that. Just tiny cracks, but nothing big, nothing all the way through. I'm okay with that. Can't quite get that open, but that's all right. I have a brush here, and part of getting this flavor really going is I'm going to brush this entire cake with a little bit more of the Creme De Menthe. So I'm just going to put our Creme De Menthe over to the side for now, because that will be getting used in some other things. I've now tasted it by itself, and oh my gosh, it's amazing. It is absolutely delicious to me. Now let's get our maple marshmallow cream, and it is nice and soft and silky, but let's just get the maple cream spread. It doesn't have to be too thick. Like, you don't need much, just because you're going to roll this up and then slice it, and it will add up. But we do want it to get all the way to the sides. You can leave it a little tapered at the sides, just a little less there, because as we roll it, it will squish out, and so it will even out a bit. It won't be perfect, of course, but that's all right. I'm going to move the cream out, because now we're just going to go ahead and roll our little roll up. And I'm just going to go somewhat cautiously. You don't have to be too cautious here, but a little bit. Exercise a little bit of kindness for yourself, mostly because it will be messy otherwise as well. As you may have just seen, some of the maple cream came out. And you know what? Perfect. That means it made it all the way to the end. So, yay! Throw that in the laundry. Now, the cream actually made it to the ends fairly well. Very happy with that. But I am going to put just a little bit more, because I'm not going to chocolate the very ends. I'm only going to put chocolate on the actual body of the roll. And I kind of want the ends to be a little bit of a surprise, so that when you cut it, you have that lovely little wheel. It's called a Catherine wheel. And you have that lovely little wheel of the cake and the cream all together in one pretty little package. Just absolutely smothered in chocolate. So I've been regularly going and stirring up my ganache as it's cooled, just to make sure it's mixed really well and to give it a little bit of lightness so that it's easier to spread. I have a rubber spatula. You can use an offset. I probably should be, to be honest, but not worried about it. You make this look however you want. Maybe this year, around the winter holidays in the North Hemisphere, summer holidays in the Southern, I will walk y'all through how to make an actual Yule log. They're involved, but they're so fun, especially the little marshmallow, like mushrooms, and you can make marzipan animals and things like that to go on it that are really cute, or trees, whatever. You decorate it as you will, and you make it kind of look like a log. But to do that, one of the easiest ways is you just take a spatula or something and you kind of just run it halfway up and down, and you get it to just leave long streaks of bark like on a tree. Let's just get a little bit more of this smeared on. Got a little bit of the marshmallow cream mixed in there, and it just blends right in. So let's get the chocolate all the way to the ends of our log. It's a grasshopper log, I guess. Ooh, yum. Dark chocolate. And finally, now of course, any good cook would be cleaning up the tray, and I will. Maybe. Probably with my fingers. Just tasting away. But let's get our little after dinner mints, these little Andes mints. But there is our grasshopper roulade. Yum, excited to taste it. All right. best part about the job. I'm going to not cut too much. One, because I don't need to eat that much, and I won't. But also, it's just not necessary. This is going to be very, very rich. And let me just, as I clean everything off, let me show you the little wheel. So you see there's the cake and the cream all rolled up, surrounded by that lovely, luscious chocolate. Throw in a fork. Okay. So first, the marshmallow cream, because yum. But it's time to taste the cake. It's so soft. And the mint in there, it's just a hint. Mild, sweet, very sweet, but light, soft. That is lovely. With just the tiniest taste of the mint. The maple is fairly strong in the marshmallow. So the two are competing, but in a really friendly way. It works. I'm happy. And I mean, I've already eaten about half of it. So yay. If you want to make a variation on your own, maybe try it with cherries and chocolate, or if you have access to it, like strawberry powder, which is just it's freeze-dried strawberries that are then ground into a fine powder, so it is actual strawberries, or raspberry, something like that. Mix that into the cake instead of creme de menthe or whatever other flavor, and so it has kind of a fruity flavor to it. And then add the chocolate. Oh, maybe do a white chocolate ganache. And then, you know, your cream, you can just do whipped cream instead of a marshmallow cream. I just like the idea of doing a little bit of confectionery because I haven't in a while. That's all. But as always, make it your own. Experiment, play with your food. It's always a good thing. So try it out for yourself. See what you come up with. Make it work for you. This is your food. You get to tell it what to do. And have fun with it. And until I see you all again, bye.